I'm Donna Trio. I'm Vice President of Tiered Services and Special Populations. I'm going into my 7th year with Generation Schools Network. Prior to that, I was director of the 3rd largest district in Colorado for as a director of special education, and that's how I met Zach. And now we're on this journey with GSN together. So Zach, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Yes, we are. Okay, Zach Hess. Hi, everybody. And Vice President of Health, Wellness, and Prevention. I've been with Generation Schools Network a few years. Donna's like pulled me out and told me to come over here and work. It's been good stuff. So we've been doing these webinars for quite some time now. It's good work. And I was also the director of Health, Wellness, and Prevention, as it would have it, at the same school district. So a lot of work in restorative practices and trauma and SEL and all that good stuff.
All right. So what are we doing today? Well, we're talking about what happens when conflict occurs in our community. How do we resolve that conflict to keep that positive community, and also work with the harmer to help them be accountable for the harm done, repair that harm, and keep the relationships together, and then reintegrate the harmer back into your classroom or school community.
Hopefully you get that, and ask questions throughout, everybody, around this if it doesn't feel like we're getting to those objectives. So make sure you ask us. All right, this is where you're going to need a piece of paper. So it doesn't matter, just a piece of paper that has corners on it, and that a piece of paper that you don't like really well. So it won't end up being the same piece of paper when we're done. I don't want to give it away because I just, All right, so we're calling this 4 corners. So first thing I want you to do it doesn't have to go in the order and look exactly like this, but what I want you to do in one of the corners of your piece of paper, I want you to write down a name of a trusted adult you had at school. So this whole activity is based around your experience at school. So you could pick elementary, middle, high school. You can pick any time in school that you would like, but kind of focus on a time in school that you remember a lot about. So the first thing is, in one corner of that piece of paper, name a trusted adult you had at school. In the next corner, write down, when did you feel successful at school? When did you feel successful? Could have been academically, could have been socially, it could have been with activities or something like that, but when did you feel successful at school? Next corner, what activities, events, athletics connected you to school? So what kind of those extracurriculars connected you to school? You're on the chess club? Were you in choir and did musicals? Did you play a sport? For those that are joining late, you can hustle and try to get this done. We're all using a piece of paper and we're writing these things in the corners of the piece of paper. Okay, the last corner. Who were your positive peers or peer groups while you were at school? So we're thinking again about a period of time in your education. You can pick elementary, middle, high school, whatever. But just think about that. Those 4 things right now. So in the corners, you want name a trusted adult you had at school. When did you feel successful at school? What activities, events, athletics connected you to school? And who were your positive peers? I'm looking through our messages here. Are we good? Oh, you got the link. Okay. All right. So I know a couple of people have just kind of joined, so you can catch up if you can think really fast and write really fast. And then we're gonna keep going. All right, now in the middle of your piece of paper, I want you to describe a time in school when you made a mistake, you caused harm, or were harmed because of conflict. So describe a time maybe that you can think of in school when you made a mistake, maybe you caused some harm, or you were harmed because of some conflict. And I'll give a couple minutes because a couple of people that came in late, they can write these things down. So this is what your piece of paper looks like. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to tear off the corners of the piece of paper, leaving the middle. So tear the corners off your paper. And what is left? This little exercise to me is really illustrating the why of restorative practices, why of restorative discipline. I could have gone in and given you tons of stats and reports and all that kind of good stuff, and you can Google those or chat GPT them and get all kind of the information you want about that. But this makes it a little more personal because in that middle part, we've probably all done that. I don't know. I haven't met a human yet that didn't screw up at least once or like 800 times. And especially at school and especially maybe your adolescent years, especially for the males in this group, right? Um, those four things in the chat or come off mute. Do you understand? Do you notice, or what do you notice, or what could you tell me about those four things, those four corners? What did they represent? You can put it in the chat, or you can just come off mute. We're all family. What do those four things represent? Practicing my good teacher wait time.
So I'm Percy from Brooklyn, New York, and I just did the four. The four things for me represented my safe space.
Love it. Thanks, Percy. Absolutely.
And David said your sense of belonging at school.
Yes.
Happy memories from Jennifer.
Love it. Thank you.
Times of positive self-esteem, Maria.
These are in the prevention world, these are called protective factors. Right? These are protective factors against all kinds of risk factors, meaning, right, and I guarantee you there were those of us in this group here because the odds are, the statistics are 1 in 6 of us, at least 1 in 6 of us had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. These protective factors are what protect you against those risk factors. Okay, so in school, if you had some of these in place, or all of these in place, then that's protecting you against some of the other not so great things happening, right? And even when you screw up, even when you make a mistake, even when things don't go great, right? You make a mistake. I'm also sure that there's some of you that couldn't fill out all 4. I've done this activity a lot of times, and there's always people in the group. I didn't have a trusted adult at school. So right now, like if you didn't have one of these 4 filled out, that's something, right? That's already, you're missing a protective factor. And then if we do traditional discipline for students that have made mistakes, caused harm, right? And some of you have been doing this with me for a while, so you understand that a restorative discipline holds people accountable, right? It's just in a different way. By keeping the protective factors. So that's what restorative practice is all about. If we don't do restorative, if we just do traditional discipline, a lot of times we rip these protective factors off the page, and all we are left with is this mistake, and it defines us. And in our head, it defines us. Any of you with kids of your own that, like maybe my son right now, who we're having lots of fun with in 7th grade, right? He makes these mistakes and he starts to define himself. It's like the worst. It's hard as a parent, right? You love your kid, you see this, and then they define themselves by the mistake they made. And that's it. And if those protective factors, I guarantee you the way my son is, if he didn't have these protective factors, then that's how he would define himself. And you know what that's like. You start to live that reality. You make that come true, right? Like I am a mistake because I don't have any of these. So to me, this is why we do restorative discipline. This is why we get into restorative practices. You can use this, by the way, if anybody wants to use this thing, there's a lot of ways you can use this kind of activity to illustrate a point, but I really like it for restorative practices. All right.
So guys, I just dropped into the chat. Zach, sorry I didn't pass this by you, but Zach and I just worked with Castle on a published research article. It got released, finalized and released. I've added the link to the chat. So that is something that you can use as a resource too and share with others, delve into. We provided examples of real life implementation of restorative practices, and it's a great logic model to use. And it was people from all over the country working on this. So you get a lot of different lenses, not just ours. So what is our definition of restorative discipline? It's a whole school relational approach to building that school climate to address student behaviors, and fosters belonging, like Zach was saying, over exclusion. It provides that social engagement over control and meaningful accountability over punishment. So the adult is not acting as the authority figure. They're working to provide the support and keep those four corners intact. And if a student doesn't have one of the four corners, figure out how to provide that to them. And then it also replaces that fear and uncertainty, and the punishment as a motivator, providing that belonging, that connectedness, the protective factors, and then taking ownership and that ability and choice and willingness to change, because people do matter to each other. And then continuing on with our definition, so punishment, that's suffering of pain, loss. It serves as a retribution. It's a penalty inflicted on an offender, often through our judicial procedure, whether it's courts or even our own school system, our own choices as we interact. And then it shifts to accountability, where it's that mindset where there's an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility and to account for one's action, while at the same time having the ability to take accountability and repair the harm. I was in a meeting. So what is the goal? Sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
No, that's it. I mean,
okay, so like I was in a meeting about 3 hours ago with one of our districts, and she has a family and a student who actually chose to get behind the wheel while intoxicated and ended up running over 5 of his peers on the school campus. Now, the school district has had to be very careful with their restorative practices, but they have done that. And now the student wants to take accountability, yet because of the court and rectify the harm, but he can't because he still has the court actions taking place. So we're really working to coach him through, you will get to, let's keep you focused, getting him therapy, his family therapy, the other students and families therapy. And we've had initial conversations with all of them in a very targeted way, with the hope that once the court has gone through their process, having that larger conversation. And Zach's going to be talking more about how that works through the rest of our presentation.
And I think if you guys notice, like when you look at like these definitions of punishment and accountability, you know, the punishment piece, if you look at it from like a school point of view, it is so adult centered, right? The adult takes all the control. It is, you know, tit for tat. It's like, you know, and it's not teaching skills. I mean, it's teaching, like, don't do it through shame, through like pain, right? Like, you're not going to do this again. But when you look at accountability, I mean, this is growing as a human, right? Like accountability, and you know, we'll talk more about this with restorative practices, but it's, you know, we're letting all the people involved take some responsibility in this. It creates that agency piece for the youth. I mean, a willingness to accept responsibility. Where would we be at if more people would just accept responsibility? It doesn't just happen. Like, we're not like some like divine intervention that all of a sudden we want to take responsibility. Our society doesn't teach us to do that. It in fact teaches us probably the opposite. But if we could teach young people at an early age, like, yes, you screwed up, it's not okay what happened, take some responsibility and let's be a part of fixing it. That, right? Like, that's what is not when I say what is the goal, like that is the goal, right?
Right. And Zach, in this case that I'm talking about, what the director of the district shared with me is, had they not done that, they truly think that this student would have died by suicide and or just gone down into complete darkness of substance abuse and misuse. And because of the way they've done this, he has remained sober, is committed to remaining sober, and the other students and families are feeling supported by the district as well. They didn't, like, the worst thing, some of these kids were flight for life out. Luckily, all of them survived and they're working through that piece. But what I learned from that story and them sharing with me today is that that restorative practice that they used, even though it was difficult, has got them to the next step of all students still feeling whole and having those four corners intact.
Yeah. That is important. All right. So this is just a little bit of review because we did this in the first one. So those of you that weren't here, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Just a reminder to get our mindset in the right place. That this heart of restorative practices, and we talk about belonging as the number one protective factor. So that's where it starts, right? And everybody being able to feel like who they are, how they identify, what their life experiences were, like they're accepted and they feel like they belong in that environment. And when that's happening, right, we're being treated with dignity. And that's different than respect, because respect is earned. And I think as adults, when we start treating kids with dignity, we do things to allow kids to feel like they belong for whoever they are. That's earning their respect, right? So there's not an automatic, I'm the adult, they should respect me. That just doesn't work in the world, especially when we talk about kids that are impacted with adverse childhood experiences. You guys can all probably understand why a youth that's maybe been neglected, abused, would not necessarily respect adults. And so we got to do that. The respect part is important, but that's earned, and we earn that by doing these things. We hold people accountable, right? We that's important. People mess up, we make mistakes, we harm people. There has to be an accountability. It doesn't mean we ignore it. We have to address the harm that was done. And again, all voices are heard. All voices, right? The people that were harmed have as much in this as the person that did the harm. Equal amounts of energy, right? And you'll see that when we talk about some of these more formalized processes. And then we're making that community whole again. Now we have a whole community again, creating the belonging. So this is the kind of the goal. So even in big deal things, I've had to expel students. I've had to suspend. There's some things you have to do. Kid brought in a weapon, right? You can still do that in a restorative way. You can still look at this model right here and be like, okay, right? There's a lot of people that were scared to death. We got to like give them time and energy and voice and be part of the solution. The kiddo that brought the weapon, right? What's their voice? What else is going on? Because I'll tell you, we don't have enough time, but there's a lot more going on to that story. And so you got to think through like all these things to make a community whole. And it's not about like, you did this, so I'm going to make your life hell because you did this bad thing. That's not what it's about, right? It is about, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's really hard to be held accountable. Sometimes the punishment is too easy, honest to God. But all right. Really quick review on the social discipline window, right? This is us trying to be in the with box. Why do we want to be in the with box? Look at the brain state. When you have a system, when you as the person in authority are doing things with students, and restorative discipline is with, right? It's not punitive. It's not me. I got you. This is what's going to happen. I'm in the with box. When that's happening, we have high levels of expectations, meaning, yep, I expect you to behave in class. It's school. You don't get to bring drugs into my school. You don't get to bring weapons in my school. This is non-negotiable stuff, right? We're holding you to high expectations. We have to look at the supports, right? Which means we've got to dig in. That's a layered continuum of supports, right? We just had a student at my daughter's high school bring a bomb to school. This just was last week. Yeah, I know everyone's like, oh crap. Like it's almost commonplace. People are like, how do you feel about that, Zach? And I'm like, it didn't blow up, so I guess we're good, right? I mean, I'm so callous to it. It's gross. It really is. I like reflecting, and I'm like, I'm not even emotional about this. And my daughter goes to the school. Like, why is this a thing, right? I asked my daughter, they had a blast. They all came home. They went to Target. They went out to lunch. It was like not even a big deal. I'm like, you guys, the kid brought a bomb to it was actual bomb. It wasn't a threat. It was like, okay, here's what I think about though. I have high expectations. What is going on with that? What are the supports in place in the school? Universal expectations for checking in on kids, for making sure that, these expectations are met. What is going on that this student thought that that was the thing that they needed to do? Like, there's a lot of questions. Is it acceptable? It's 100% unacceptable. But what are some, like, when you start to dig into it, and that's the philosophy, that's this mindset of restorative practices, like we're willing to dig in a little bit, right? And so I got to be in the with box. What is going on, and why aren't you meeting those high expectations? What are all the supports? Because it's about learning. So if we're doing these things, look at the brain state, like I was saying, right? I'm relaxed, I'm alert. That's learning. That's taking accountability. That's all this good stuff, right? So think about this, but think about it now from a discipline lens, not just like building relationships, but from a discipline point of view. Because getting in that with box, right? To get in that with box, we talk about fair process. Very simple, authentically engaging everybody involved in the decision making, explaining why you made the decision, and then setting clear expectations. Okay, quick review again of these. Engaging everybody, explaining what's going on, why we're doing what we're doing, and then setting clear expectations. That's fair process in a nutshell. All right. Donna, you're up.
Sorry, I had to unmute. So first things first, are you ready to respond and not react? So how do we do this? Pause. Simple as that. Pause and take a deep breath. If you need to take a moment to yourself, it's okay to verbalize that. It's okay to say, I'm not in the space right now to deal with this. I need a moment. Gather your thoughts. Think about what emotion you're feeling. Because if we name it, we can tame it. Identify, am I frustrated? Am I angry? Am I hurt? What's going on inside of myself? This is modeling too for your students. And then talk to your amygdala. Why am I getting hijacked right now? I know I might be feeling really frustrated. And what is going on in my body and my mind that's causing me to feel this way? What are my feelings? Am I just ready to jump out of my skin and scream? Do I just want to crawl and hide and withdraw? Think about yourself and what your reaction is. And then use your strategies, whether it's breathing, taking that break, meditation, journaling quick, writing things out, writing your thoughts down to de-escalate. And then choose your affective language. How are you going to do this? And of course, always and forever, remind yourself you've got this. Even though it's going to be hard, even though there's a possibility of not doing it exactly as is, I'm trying. I can do this, and I'm going to do my best to do it with the skills I have in the way that honors the person I'm serving.
And the reason that we, like Donna's going through these things, is when we're in our survival brain, when we're hijacked, we're not going to respond. We're not going to come at this from a curious mindset. We're not going to come at a behavior issue, a discipline issue in a place where I'm actually seeking to understand, right? I'm going to come across in a safety place, which is going to be like survival, which is the opposite of that. It's going to be a reaction, right? Which is typical. That's what we've learned. That's what we've seen modeled to us probably a million times. But that's why you can't handle a discipline issue if you are not calm. If you are feeling all tight and ready to then stop.
Right.
Give everybody a break.
And
right?
it's like when you're driving your car, right, Zach? You can
Yeah.
choose to honk your horn at the person in front of you, or you can choose to say, you know what, that's not going to impact my day. Good luck, buddy. And you keep going, right? It's the same thing in this situation. You can choose to explode it, or you can choose to say, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to remain calm. I need to get myself calm to be able to then move forward for both myself and others.
And because again, if we look backwards, right? If we look at the brain state stuff, right? If everybody's in that anger and that hijacked place, we're not in relaxed and alert. Like, we're not going to be able to have a conversation about what just happened, and I'm not going to take accountability. By the way, I'm going to survive. So they're going to model what we are, right? And if our body and our tone is aggressive and we're like pissed off and we're just ready to get after it, well, I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I already said I was a boxer. So you're gonna come at me, I'm coming back, right? My hands are up, my defenses are up. I'm not open to like taking accountability. Now I'm fighting you, right? So respond.
So we're going to practice. Again, this takes our participation. Feel free to chat, put it in the chat, or just unmute. We have a scenario here. So you have a student who's disrupting your class. You have talked to the student over and over. They just keep interrupting and disrupting and maybe talking out loud or poking the student next to him, just any way to be disruptive. And you feel like that student is being disrespectful and showing contempt for you as an adult and teacher. So a lot of good work can be done without formal processes. How would you go about using that social discipline window, the fair process, and also your calming strategies to de-escalate yourself? What would you do in this scenario?
Come off mute or put it in the chat.
Or
Again,
how might you want to be in this scenario?
maybe that's a good one. Like, on my best days, I'd like to do it this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, hey, let's have grace for ourselves also. Like, sometimes my wife is like, you teach this stuff, right? And I'm like, yes, I do. And I guarantee it's because I'm in the react stage. That's why. If I was in calm, I would remember, oh yeah, I do teach this stuff. It works. So we have to have grace for ourselves.
If I had the luxury to do so, I may ask one of my colleagues to relieve me, to step away for a moment.
Love
so I
that.
may be able to collect myself. That would be one strategy I could use in the moment if I'm so overwhelmed.
Percy, I love that. And that brings up a really good point, y'all. Like, if it's a safety issue, it's a safety issue, right? Like, there's some, like, they're saying when kids are getting hurt, like, you're going to react. That's a reaction. I'm not going to like pause and take a couple minutes, right? I'm going to react to that. I'm saying like this is disrupting class. You feel like this is happening. Like, this is not an immediate where I have to go in hijacked into this situation, right? There might be some other things I can do to calm myself down. And I could think about this. How do we approach this in the with box? How do we use fair process to address something like this?
I actually had this situation yesterday. And I think Percy's right. Like, I had, as the school counselor, I just was pushing in to do some affective statements with some students that felt that were doing some conflict circle. And the student who I have a really good relationship with, she started rolling her eyes at me. I was like, oh. Okay, how do I respond to this without like reacting to it? And so I was able to take her out of the classroom. She wanted to go see her older sister. We stood in the hallway for 10 minutes and I didn't say anything to her. And not because like I didn't have things I wanted to say, but because like I knew that if I would speak, it was going to cause more harm. And so I just had to like just wait it out. And then finally we had a chance to talk, but it took a lot of work on my part to just to calm myself down and to not react to the eye rolling and to realize like I'm on team, E. I'm on E's team, and we got to get her to a place where she can receive that I'm on her team and know that I'm for her and that I was not going to go after her just because she was going after me. But it took some work.
Well, Jennifer, you brought up some thank you so much for coming up and sharing, because hope everyone was listening. Like, here's some things that were demonstrated. When we talk about state-dependent de-escalation, right? Jennifer understood that this young lady was not in a place, right? You have to be in a certain brain state to de-escalate and actually have a cognitive conversation. Sitting there and letting them go through that in their brain. There's science out there that tells you that it takes about 90 seconds. Now, this is, I know people are gonna be like, well, if there are no other inputs, it should take about 90 seconds for adrenaline and cortisol to surge through those brains and through that limbic and survival part of your brain, and then dissipate and your parasympathetic nervous system come back online. In someone that's not impacted by adverse childhood experiences and, you know, are neurotypical, our students, that's about how long. That's an average of 90 seconds. But if you say, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's up. You just switched it back to 90 more seconds because they're in this brain down here, not in this brain up here. So you just stressed this part of the brain out. So it surges more cortisol and adrenaline. And so it's like, oh, right. And like, start the clock over. Come on, I asked you a question. Oh, 90 seconds more, right?
Mhm.
Letting them be in that moment. This wasn't a safety issue, right, Jennifer? You took it exactly, right? You let her, those hormones and all that stuff kind of just, and let her body come back online. And you can tell shoulders drop,
Yep.
finally look at you. They might say something like, all right, miss what? You know, like anything, any of these clues, but now they're at the state that where you can start to have a cognitive conversation. You can start using, we'll learn about those later, and some of you already know, but those affective questions where we're starting to try to get to what was happening and how we're going to make things right. But that's not going to happen in eye rolling stage, right? Like they're already done. Like you're like, oh, okay, miss, I got you, right? We're at eye rolling stage. I'm not going to have the cognitive demand. And it's so hard because the second thing you pointed out, we are, as far as educators and people that work with youth, we are the most unhealthy, most stressed out profession in the United States. I'm sure you guys know that. You're like, oh, duh, thanks, Zach, for that epiphany. Especially now, it's March. This is a great time of year. So it's so difficult to respond and not react when we ourselves are not healthy, right? When we are hijacked constantly, when we are in this state of dealing with toxic stress, right? Stress after stress after stress. This is why, and to a point that Dawn and I wrote in that Castle article that she shared with everybody, is this so important for the aspect of health and wellness of the adults, right? Because when we're healthy, you guys know this, like you go home and your kid does something, if you're like in a good place and you're not even tired, like you're like, okay, I'm going to handle this great. When you are maxed out, you're tired, you're stressed, and your precious little angel does something really stupid, you don't, at least I'll just be vulnerable. I don't. Like I go to the 2 box, right? I'm not in the with box because I just don't have it in me. And that's okay for all of us to understand, but we want to be there. So if we take better care of ourselves, we can be there. So a really big aspect, we don't have slides about that, but Jennifer, you brought that up. And for you to be able to stand in that hallway and do that and have the wherewithal, you're in a good place to be able to do that. Because not judging anybody, but not everybody's there, right? If it's been a hard day and this is little girl number 18 of the day, you might not respond the same. And that's okay. The goal is that we do it more than not, but
Yeah. And Laura said, maybe ask what they need right now. And Angie said, use an affective statement. One thing that I've learned this year that I use a lot now is even just taking a step back and say, can you tell me more? Right.
Yep.
Then my brain gets time to think and hear and listen rather than having to process what I need to do next and can give me more insight.
And that's it. That's the with box. That's fair process, right? I'm engaging with them. I'm not just saying, blah, 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 blah. I'm engaging with them. I didn't have to teach anybody a formal anything. But if we're thinking about being in that with box, I'm still holding them to high expectations. It's not okay to roll your eyes at me. Don't like that, right? That's disrespectful. I'm working for you. Like I'm team E. What the heck, right?
Zach, Andrea has an example to share. Sorry.
Okay, go for it. I want to hear it.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut y'all off. I just thought I would put it in the chat that, so I teach first grade and lots of emotions, learning social things. And so social emotional learning is very important. We have, but I've made a space in my room that's this calming corner / our reading nook little area, but it doubles as a calming corner. And so kids in my classroom know that they can go over there if they need a moment. It can be that they can be in, it could be they're sad or they're just not focused and they want to reset. And so we talk about all the different ways that reasons that everybody in our class has a reason to go to that corner at some point. You know, it's that I go into it sometimes, and but I have fidgets in there and like a calming light, a comfy chair with a stuffed animal. You know, I have different things posted in that area, like the zones of regulation posters that go through the effective language. Um, like questions like what were you feeling, you know, what was your brain telling you, how can we make this right, you know, different things like that. But kids sometimes it's a teacher directed thing of, hey, why don't you go on over there, they flip the sand timer, it's 3 minutes, and then they just come back, and it's just a real seamless transition of going over there, getting what they need, and then coming back reset. And so sometimes it could be for various reasons. Anything and everything could require someone, or would encourage someone to go over there. And sometimes you don't have a clue what this person is going through in their head, but they went over there for a little bit. But I know that I can check on later. Or if there's an issue between two students, after we resolve it, I say, do you want to go to the calming corner for a little bit and talk more, or spend some time as like a restorative time after the conversation? But most of the time they go over there and they come back to our whole group ready. They just needed some time.
And I thank you, Andrew, because that was the social, right? You set high expectations for behavior, but also this expectation for them to learn and recognize their own, like the SEL, right? Self-awareness, self-management, taking responsibility, but you've given the high supports. So that is an example of the with box. You've set those expectations, right? That, hey, I expect you guys to be able to handle these things, right? And I expect that to happen in the classroom, but I'm going to give you all the supports, right? We're going to create this calm down corner with these strategies, like all these things to help you realize that high expectation. That's a perfect example of the with box. Thank you. Excellent. All right, David, your turn.
I was just going to share, I'm not 100% in that situation because I'm out of the classroom. You know, being the dean, I'm the one they call that they think I'm going to do the two, you know, with the kid after, which is okay. It's fine. But what I have learned to be most effective, actually, especially for this year with like longer term behavior change, has been me de-escalating and then including the teacher after and having a conference, and not like before it was like I give the consequence or I do the restorative meeting with the kid, but like and explain about community and harm and everything. But when it comes from the teacher in more of a mediation way, and the kid can really understand when they're calmer or whatever, I feel like I've found more long-term success, you know, like instead of just me trying to do it with the kid. When it's the three of us, they can really understand how they're affecting the classroom by being disrespectful of the teacher. And, you know, the teacher plans 180 lessons all the time, like really understand that, you know, how hard it is to do that. Are getting much less repeat offenders, for lack of a better word. Than we are when it's just me either doing a detention or a meeting or even calling a parent, you know, then involving the teacher of the classroom.
Oh, thanks, David, for sharing. That's awesome, man. I mean, and you just demonstrated fair process, right? Involving everybody involved in the situation to be a part of it. Because I don't know about you, but when I started out as a dean and before I was doing the restorative thing, right? Like I would put all this work and time and energy and like think I came up with this great consequence, and the teacher would still be pissed at me. Right.
Yep.
So it was like, because I did it to them, right? And it was like not good enough or didn't meet their whatever thing that they had in their brain that was supposed to happen, right? And I was like, and I'd be like, then I was pissed, right? I was like, I spent freaking 3 hours with this kid, like, and you know, like, what the heck, right? And that's why this was so powerful to me. And once I learned that exactly what you did, it was like this epiphany. I started including them. And then it was this amazing thing. There was no pushback because they were part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't blame anybody. Like, we all figured this out together. We were engaged authentically. It was clearly put what was going to happen and clear expectations for all of us. So like everyone was happy. And I was like, why didn't I do, what the heck, man? Where was this, years ago? Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I think like, and when you're talking about accountability, like you know, somehow even being the deliverer of bad news and the consequence I get along with them pretty well, but like, so it's an easier conversation. But when they like accountability wise, when they have to face that teacher, you know, in a circle or across the table, I have to look them in the face and say like, you know, I'm going to own what I did and I'm sorry about that. And here's how I'm going to make it better. Like, I feel like they feel that more than just doing it with me.
Totally, man. That's awesome. Absolutely. I hope everybody got that. It's good stuff.
And I think with our examples, we walked through a lot of the continuum.
Yeah.
Zach, we can just be done. So we've talked about, we've had some of this conversation already, but we have impromptu conferencing, that connection circles, one-to-one agreements, solution circles, mediation meetings, and formal conferencing. So we can see on this continuum, what takes less time and energy in planning are that connection circles and impromptu conferencing. What takes a little bit more of that time, energy, and planning is those solution circles, those one-to-one agreements, and the mediation meetings. And formal conferencing, like those mediation meetings and the solution circles do take time because you're doing them authentically. You're allowing people to voice and have their voice be heard. That's the amount of time why it's so much more. And then planning for that formal conferencing, that takes a lot of energy. You have to be very careful with that and make sure that you have had practice before you do it. You may even have Zach or someone like myself come in and model it before you even try it. We're not saying don't try it, just give yourself some practice. And Zach, I think you have a good example of one that you had to do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I think the one I like giving as an example of a formal conferencing is the student that brought the weapon and that we had to, we had to expel because that's the law here in Colorado, as in most states. But what it impacted, when you look at spheres of influence, right? There was a lot of people that were really affected by it. It was very scary for the people in the lunchroom. It was very scary for the teachers. It impacted me of this kid. But through this process, right, what we happen, again, me keeping an open mind, not reacting, not getting so angry at this kid, like how dare, not. I was in my thinking brain and we started, and what we uncovered is the kiddo brought a weapon to school because he'd been bullied pretty significantly for about 6 weeks under a stairwell in our school. And so then I had a really epiphany of like, what the heck is wrong with us adults, myself included, who's supposed to be walking these halls how did I not notice this? Why did this kid not have a trusted adult that why wouldn't he come to me? I'm the dean. Like, I'm out there all the time. Why would he not come to me and say, Mr. Hess, this is what's going on. I need help. Why? I was like, I mean, I was like so like mad at the whole situation, right? And we're talking to his teachers and they're all upset because like, I didn't know, I never even knew, like all of these things. So in this process, we uncovered more. So the spheres of influence got even bigger. We did a formal conference with the 4 boys that were bullying this kid because he was different, right? He was an easy target. It's kind of sad. It was very sad, not kind of sad. It was very sad. Their families, the kiddos' families, everyone that was scared about the weapon, like all of it, that was a pretty big circle. A lot of time and energy. But I'll tell you what the result was. Yes, the kiddo was expelled, but it was a deferred expulsion. The students that did the bullying also had to be held accountable, obviously. And they were, not through an expulsion or a suspension. Like, it was more through mediation with the family and with that student, making reparations, right? There's a lot of work that had to go into that for the power differentials and all that kind of stuff, as you can imagine. But the power was this kid came back to school. It started his freshman year on time at the high school and had a successful and didn't have a behavior, nothing, all was good. Like those 4 boys, from what I heard, things went well with them. So those are the things, those are those stories that are like these life-changing events. Now, if we'd have done that traditionally and not done some of that work and not uncovered some of those things, right? I don't know. Who knows the trajectory of this kiddo, right? Who knows? He wasn't a violent, horrible, he was a scared kid in desperation. That's, so this is why this process, although maybe hard, is so beautiful and so powerful when you can do kind of that kind of reparation and creating this whole community. The kid didn't go with a stigma. Those other boys, as far as bullies, didn't live their life with this stigma. They truly understood how bad that was and what they did, and they understood how that drove a kid to go to those extremes and what the consequences could have been, because guess who would have been the targets, right? Like you got, I mean, like there's a lot of real world stuff that went in there. And so anyway, guys, and I have a lot of those, and anybody that's done these has these stories. They're beautiful. That's why we keep doing them. I'm so passionate about them. But all right, we got to hustle here.
Okay, so we have relationships, human relationships, and the effects of relationships on relationships are the building blocks of healthy development. This is the foundation of restorative practices, that authenticity, that trust, that dignity to earn respect. So if you've been with us before, dignity is a given, respect is something that's earned. Every human being has self-worth. They matter. That's what we do when we say we're providing dignity automatically. And you can earn respect. You can develop trust. We can always be authentic if we choose to be authentic. But dignity is something that we just wholeheartedly give. And then with that restorative discipline practices and that modality builds those relationships. And it isn't as effective if there aren't those relationships. So like we were talking when we were hearing, when we were hearing Andrea's story, right? She's taken the time to develop those relationships, work around that SEL. And when you look at that research article that Zach and I helped with, that's the foundation too. You have to have established those relationships. You do that work beforehand so that when you get into that restorative discipline, you have that established. You hopefully have developed respect between everyone. There's somewhat sense of trust, and everybody can then be their authentic selves because they have that relationship. So affective questions, we've had that come up a couple times in the chat. Here's some things that you can use. We want to try to avoid using should. We can replace that word with could. Try to avoid why. You can say try or what. And then this is a list of questions that you can do. Remember that your tone and body language say more than your words. And especially for students who are struggling, or even those with identified disabilities, they may be interpreting your tone and body language in an incorrect way too. So be aware of that when you're asking these things. And even if it's something, like I said earlier, just to get the conversation going, tell me more, and then you can start running through this list of questions. Or pick and choose those questions. It's not a list that you have to use. You don't have to ask every single one of these. You have to read that room. You have to read that student. You have to read where they are too. Maybe they need a break before you start moving on, and you give them a pause and you schedule another time to meet, or you allow them to have some time to unwind themselves and coach them with some coping strategies through that. It's a constant, like you're ebbing and evolving, right? It can feel like a roller coaster while you're doing it, and it is a roller coaster. Sometimes it goes smooth, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes all of a sudden, out of nowhere, holy cow, there's a big drop, and you're like, what just happened? But knowing that you can reset at any point in time. And then utilizing the impromptu conference. This one, like we saw earlier, it can take less energy to expend upon that, less time, and talking with the student, using the affective language, getting to learn more about what happened, right? First and foremost, we got to calmly stop that behavior or situation.
Because y'all, like, if you see all of us, what is that? Like,
Right.
do you know what's going on?
Yeah,
Right. I mean, that could be they have a buddies having fun because their boys wrestling. It could be a fight, could be a like, we don't know, right? So don't assume.
Could be this student here tried to help the other student off and accidentally fell on top of them. We don't know.
Yeah.
We got to know. We got to figure that out and look at it not through our bias lens, but with an open lens. Tell me more about what happened. making that affective statement, making that affective statement not about them, but about you. So an example, I don't like seeing this kind of behavior because I'm worried. There's your naming your emotion about someone getting hurt, why you're worried. And this is not expected behavior. Like Zach said earlier, you still have expectations. You can articulate those using the affective statement. And then giving pause and wait time to ask questions one at a time. What happened? Okay, tell me more. What's going on? If they give you, I don't know, can you tell me more? Or you can say, from my lens, this is what I think happened. Am I correct? Am I incorrect? Tell me more about what was happening, what was going on. And then you can move into, what do you take responsibility for? And finally, how do you think we can make things right? That's an impromptu conference right there.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be formal. Like, not everything has to be, and I'm sure David would like, not everything has to be a referral and go to the dean and go to the office, right? Like, if we have some of these skills, here's the thing is, I have a lot of faith in educators and people around children. You ask some of these questions and the hairs on the back of your neck go, like, if this is something more, I do need to write this up as a referral, or I do need to refer this to the next level, but it might be nothing. So what happened? Oh, whatever, I think of recess as always like the bigger, right? Like, he tackled me and we're not supposed to tackle. Oh yeah, gosh, I understand. That's kind of scary. Like, so what do you take responsibility for, right? Or you're just getting them to talk, and if it's nothing, then it's nothing. Then you handle it right there. It's an impromptu conference. And I'm just asking, instead of making, because I know you may not remember, but your kiddos, my son tells me this, they hate accusations, like assuming that something horrible is happening, assuming that it's just the worst thing in the world, right? Ask, and you'll get a lot further along. All right, so that kind of leads us into this one-to-one agreement. So you got the impromptu conference, right? Pretty easy, short, it's done. Now, let's say that there's some things going on in the classroom, or you've talked to a student, you've tried to use some affective questions, use your affective statements, try to change the behaviors, and you need to amp it up a little bit. That's what a one-to-one is. And so what I want you to notice really particularly what this is. Now, you guys will all get this presentation. You can make this document for yourselves and do a couple little additions. I would not change the order of the way these questions are going to be asked. Okay, it's a one-to-one conversation with a student in private. So yes, it might take a little extra work. So this is further along the continuum. You might have to use a recess. You might have to use I don't know, like, your planning period, or ask the dean or assistant principal or something like that. If you can have a moment, you get coverage from your class, you might have to do this. If you notice how this thing works, right? You can use it as like a contract if you want. Like, oh, here we are, something formal. It's a piece of paper. You could totally do that. I was a middle school guy, so sometimes this was effective. Sometimes, the older the students are, it's not as effective for that, but it is a nice guide to help with the conversation. If you notice, so I want to use this lens, all of you on here that are elementary school and deal with younger age kids. Think of this, right? And think about filling this out. And then at the bottom, when it has student and staff signature, maybe add parent signature. So you send this home. Think about what it feels like every time, and some of you know this like me, when you get an email from the school about your kid or something like that happens, it's like, oh God, they're going to think my kid's the worst kid. Like, he's a great kid. Like, all these things, right? All these emotions. The first thing that they see is positive things about the student. So I'm starting it out as the adult. I'm sitting down with the kid and I'm saying, Donna, what I love is when you are on task in class, you really do some amazing work, right? And now think about this. That's the first thing a parent sees. It's the first thing the kid hears. Not, why you're in the office, right? Because you're a little knucklehead. Like, no. Hey, let's talk about something positive first. Now, I asked the student, let's stay positive. Like, what's one thing you do like about class or about school? Is there something, again, I'm using affective language, but I'm staying positive. Now I get into the concerns. But guess what? I asked the student first. right? From what is it? What are your concerns? What's happening in class that you're not liking or not, not enjoying? You got to be vulnerable here, right? I've heard some stuff for sure, but it again, it's almost like throwing them off, because they're like, wait, I get to talk to? Yes, you have voice. We're in the with box. And then here's my concerns, Donna. I've asked you, I don't even know, I've kind of lost track how many times to stay in your group when we're doing our projects and not go to other groups because you're disrupting. And then it makes me, and I'm using my affective language, and I get kind of stressed out about that because I'm worried about a bunch of other kids. You're a leader in the class. So if it's okay for Donna to get up and walk all around, it must be okay for Sally and Timmy and Joe. And that freaks me out, man. Like that causes me all kinds of anxiety, and I don't like that. So I need this to stop. That's my concern, right? Can we agree on this? So now we come up with collaborative agreements. What can we agree on? Right? What can we talk about? Okay. Again, I can have high expectations, but now if I'm uncovering that those high expectations, because Donna's like, I can't sit still this long, Hess. You give me an hour block of time to sit in this damn desk with 4 people, I cannot do it. Oh, what would help? Can I stand up? Can I do can maybe we go to the hallway and can we move it? Oh, okay, man. That's some good stuff there, Donna. I like those ideas. Okay. I can do some of that stuff. Maybe we take breaks or something. We'll do some more movement. I hear what you're saying, right?
And oh gosh, as a teacher, my goodness, maybe I need to monitor this one a little bit more and see if there's something deeper going on.
Right. Like it's again, we're in the with box. I'm engaging authentically. We're going to explain it, and now going to set clear expectations, right? So what supports could be helpful? We agree on those, and yeah, you know what, Donna, I'll do those things. I'll uphold my end of the deal. You uphold your end of the deal. Let's check in a week or two. How's that sound? Okay, good. We sign, right? Now, maybe I don't sign. Maybe it's just a conversation. Maybe this is a high school senior I'm talking to, right? And it's like, I'm like, it's just a more of adult kind of like, yo, I know it's homeroom, but come on, Donna. Like, give me a break, like whatever, but I'm going to follow this because it's still, we think of them as adults. They're not adults. Their brains are not adult brains yet. So still follow the template. Donna at a senior still wants the adult to say good things about them. We all did, right? They want their voice heard, especially as an older student. They want their voice to be heard. They want to be part of the solution. They don't need to want the adults talking at them anymore. I've been doing school now for 13 years. Let's talk, right? So just follow this. I think it's a really effective strategy. All right. So that's that. You guys can use that, but don't change the order, but the signature blocks and all that good stuff. Okay. Where are we at here? Mediation. Okay, so this is one David has talked about, other people have talked about, like these are the things you're gonna do. These happen quite frequently. It's pretty good strategy for discipline. Now, here's the thing. The classroom teachers and those of you in that role, this takes more time, right? So it might not happen in a classroom. Now you could get coverage and you could do it. I was always the guy, and I'm always going to be the evaluator, the supervisor as a admin that wants to keep as much power to the teacher in the classroom as absolute possible as I can. So I'm not going to take this away from him saying, no, I'm going to do the mediations. I would offer that as, guys, I will help you. I can support you. I'll take your class. You can do these mediations. I get it if it's just too much. I understand I can do these too, but I would never just take that power away. I want them to have the power. And because they know the kids best, that they have the better relationships, they can do these things. Okay. So the first thing you got to do is you got to do the pre-conference. Number 1 rule, do not break that rule. I hate to be so structured. I'm not typically a super structured guy, but if you're going to bring 2 people together or a student and an adult together or 2 adults together, I did this for our HR as a courtesy, and I would do staff conflict before it had to go to like HR and like the ugly stuff and go on your record, right? You don't skip the pre-conference. That is separately each individual involved, right? It might be more than 2, it might be 4, right? I've done entire special education teams at a high school that were about to kill each other. It was 15 people. Every single person was interviewed. And I asked affective questions. There may be no real black and white harmer or harmed, right? But let's say two kiddos situation, and I know there is, I'm going to ask the harmer first. I'm going to try to meet with them first and ask some of these questions to see if they'll take responsibility and to see if this is going to be safe. That's a kind of power differential thing. So I don't want to ask the person that was harmed and say, okay, Don, I know this is really hard. Would you be willing to meet with David? And Donna's like, yeah, I would. And I go to David and she's like, and he's like, I can't stand her. I'm not meeting with her. And, oh, shoot, Donna, sorry. He doesn't want to. Like, how does that feel? That doesn't feel good. Right. So when I'm asking if this is a possibility, right, it's always voluntary. I don't make it a mandatory thing, right? Mediation should be voluntary because you want to be, in here, thinking part of the brain, right? So we're going to do these and I'm going to ask everybody separate. If they've taken some responsibility, I know that it's safe, that it's going to be safe, and they want to meet with these other people, then it's a go. Okay. Then once I know that, now if not, we'll do some other things, right? We can do some
Zach,
other things. Yeah.
David asked, what's your strategy if they say no?
Ah, good. Yeah. If they say no, then I'm looking at, okay, for example, like a no is, again, but everybody has an amount of time. So let's say it's two people and one guy says no, and I'm like, okay, they still have to have some accountability. Like maybe there's some things that they need to work on. And maybe it's like building some social emotional learning skills. We have to talk, we have to meet, we have to do these things. And I'm always working on it. So I don't just give up on the first no, but right. I just don't like, and this takes more time. Okay. It does take time, but that's what I try to do. And I'm like, all right, no, I understand. This is hard right now. I'm going to check in with you, but I need you to know, like, people were harmed by this. Right. And so I need, like, let's say they said some racist marks or something. I need you to do some education part for me. I need you to understand the impact of this. Here's a little thing I developed. Like, why don't you read this or watch this, answer some questions. We'll talk about how that language is not okay. Right. Yep. I know you're a good dude, but that kind of stuff isn't flying in the school. So you're going to have to learn some stuff at school. The other person, maybe there's a person that was harmed by that. What do you need to make things right? What do you need to feel safe going back to class? Right. And now I'm going to focus on that right there, because that's important. Right. And then it actually is rare when you come back to it and then say, are you sure you don't want to have some, time and just try to meet and talk this out? This is part of the whole school work and why restorative practice is like a whole school thing and not just only what the dean does, right? Because when it's only the dean doing restorative practices, it's harder to break down those barriers, right? Because just go with this. If I'm in a class, if I'm a kid in a classroom and the teacher uses affective language, the teacher uses circles, the teacher addresses the conflict in the class as much as they can and asks questions and it's safe and I'm held accountable, right? I know I messed up. I have to make things right. We make things right. I repair. Then when I go to the dean for something more serious and I am asked, what do you take responsibility for? I'm be like, oh, okay, I totally screwed up. I was not thinking. I'm an idiot. I'm so sorry. I did this, right? Now, if this is the first time going to the dean and the first time in their office and they're having a referral, letting their guard down and being vulnerable and taking responsibility is going to take me a lot more time. It's going to take time to do the work. So that's why when I say this is whole school, I mean it's whole school, because it makes everybody's job easier. It makes the kids then understand, they know what accountability is, right? Because if not, they're just going to deny it, right? Like, you got it on camera, Hess? Like, what do we do when we get pulled over for a speeding ticket? Show me the radar. I didn't speed. You know damn well if you're speeding or not, right? We got to shift the whole way society looks at this stuff, right? And our kids are in the cars with us. They watch TV. If it's whole school, then they come into the office and they say, I know, I messed up, because it's not fear of like this horrible punishment, feeling shamed, feeling horrible about themselves. It's none of that. They understand that it's going to be some work and they're going to make things right. But in the end, it feels a lot better. So that's it. So David, sometimes it does take some more time, right? And I don't let it go. But again, it is voluntary. So sometimes it's not. And then I have to deal with those things separately and look at the learning side of things and then put some things in place like, hey, bud, you you brought something into school that you weren't. So for, the next month, come in, check in with me. I want to say hi. I'm looking through your backpack. We're doing all the, like, it's other things that I got to do to make sure that I'm creating a safe environment for everybody else. It may seem a little more punitive, but if I'm doing it in the with box and I'm doing it like with fair process, it's not a punitive. I'm still doing it restoratively. So anyway, okay, everybody feel safe. When we do the mediation, we ask the same questions. This is not a time to ask some weird questions all of a sudden and freak people out, right? Like keeping them in, it's already now all of a sudden I'm looking at the people and I'm like already going to be kind of hijacked a little. So don't freak them out by asking different questions. Ask the same questions. They've already gone through the answers. They're familiar. It's predictable. That's going to keep them in the thinking part of the brain. And then come up with the commitments. That's the what are you going to do, right? So here's those questions, right? If I know there's a very, very black and white harmer, harmed, it's just easy to tell, then I can do it like this. If not, I might mix them up a little, right? If it's gray, right, and both people had a play and it wasn't just like, as typically with youth, it's not just one person's fault. It's kind of a, yeah, I see. You did have some responsibility, didn't you, with that? And you're going to ask those questions, right? And the end of the last one for both is what do we need to make? I'm asking both of them. What do you need to do to make things right? What needs to happen? How are we going to walk out of Hess's office and be able to function together without getting in a fight, without causing more drama, and feeling safe to be in this school together? Like what has to happen? And that's what we do. And usually, they're thinking about that a little bit, obviously, because I've asked them already. So they have some more time to think. Now their answers might change, and usually they do. Usually the answers the second time, right, are much more in depth. They're a little deeper than the first one with you. So just kind of be prepared for that. Okay. All right, solution circles. I guess we're gonna have to hustle, huh? We're only 8 minutes behind. We're good. All right. You're up, Donna.
All right, sorry. Lost count on my slides. So solution circles, how do we do this? So this is typically when we're addressing a classroom situation. We can use the circle planning document and using again those affective statements. I'm concerned about how we are not meeting classroom expectations because I've noticed learning not happening and I'm worried about students who aren't feeling safe. So there's your affective statement, sets the stage for the solution circle. And then the mediator or the facilitator can then guide those using those affective questions. What expectations do you think we aren't meeting? How does it make you feel when? What can we do to make it right? Notice how we're not saying, what can I do to make it right? We're asking, what can we do? Again, the I versus we feels much different. If we use I, then we're making it about ourselves. We're taking control. Whereas if with the we can be together and not using you as well, because then it's not my problem. But how are we going to come together to make this right? So here's an example for the whole class. The opening, you're going to read through the classroom expectations, right? Nobody's listening. Like Zach said earlier, here's the expectations in the classroom. Everybody agree? Does everybody understand? Any questions on this piece? You can also introduce the talking piece. You don't have to use a talking piece. We've seen teachers have the class build their talking piece. What that talking piece allows for is if you don't have the talking piece, you're not to talk. It's very good. It's a very good way, especially with our younger students, to get them used to listening rather than feeling like they need to talk. It sets up that expectation for the circle. You can do a check-in on a FIST to 5 simple one. How are we doing following classroom expectations? How do you think personally each of you are doing? 1 being horrible, 5 being I'm doing great, got it. Guidelines and values. Take responsibility, listen, don't interrupt, be kind. You may have taken time to set these up before, and they may look different for your guidelines and values. If not, these are some good ones that you can use. And then we have discussion rounds. So what classroom expectations are we doing well with? everybody can share, they get an opportunity to share. They can also choose to pass and not share. We honor that space. And if a student's constantly passing on that, then we're going to be careful and maybe say, you know what, that's one I might want to check in with. Are they feeling comfortable? What do they need from me? So here's some questions you can go through in those discussion rounds. And look at the last one, what we can do to help each other out. That again, that we were problem solving. And then finally, we want to make sure we end with a checkout. On a fist to 5, what is your commitment to creating a better classroom climate? And then our closing, providing them a thank you. You can make your own thank you, but really honoring their time together and their commitment to being part of that space and to growing and learning together. So thank you for being honest and making a commitment to create a great classroom environment. I'm really looking forward to getting back into things. Does anybody have any questions before we adjourn or before we move on with our next step, with our next learning opportunity?
So this template, again, it's like a lesson plan. So this is just an example of how you want to do it. But you got to pay attention to how much time you have and want to spend. That's why, like, when the discussion rounds, obviously, if you have a class of 30 and you want every kid to share, right, you really have to do the math, right? And so plan it out, because this is what the feedback we'll get a lot of times from teachers. Like, I wanted to do a circle. I took the whole class period. I lost my whole thing. Like, that's why you got to plan it, right? We don't go into, a science lesson willy-nilly doing a lab without planning what that's going to look like and how long it's going to take, right? No teacher ever does that. You got to have so same thing with a circle. Hey, I want to address this whole, I don't want to single out students, right? I just want to address this as a whole class. How can I do this in circle? So you can see how this could be a little amount of time or a lot amount of time, depending on what you want to put into this. But do you have to follow all of these? Nah, but don't forget the values and the guidelines, obviously the discussion rounds, right? And then close it. I like to try to do something positive, something tough, something positive, the whole sandwich idea, right? So something like that. It usually is effective. So this is whole class. Now Donna's going to go over what it would be like if you just wanted to hold a student accountable in a classroom circle. Okay, a lot more nuances to this.
Right. So you have one student who's harmed. How do you do this? Again, you're going to use the circle planning document. That student must be ready to take responsibility and be willing to participate in the circle. And going back to David's question of what if they say no? Well, then that tells you that you need to do a little bit more work and work with them to determine what it could look like and when they're ready. And then sorry, my daughter just walked in from work, guys, if you hear the noise in the background. But this is determined during that pre-conference. You're setting the stage, making sure that they're ready. We're not doing this to publicly shame anyone or to make them say, I'm the worst person in the world, right? That's not what we're doing here. We also want to make sure that we're not calling that person out, like saying, oh, now because Zach messed up, we have to have a solution circle, or everybody get together so we can hear Zach, right? You've established those relationships and you're saying there's been harm done. We are all going to meet together and we're going to listen, learn, and grow together so that we can have accountability and allow next steps to occur. No public shaming. That's a huge thing. And we want to ask the student who's responsible for the harm in the circle for them to tell what happened. What do they take responsibility for and what they think can make this right? So you've already done that pre-conference. They're set up to share. You can even, sometimes you have to give them a little practice of sharing out with you. They can have little notes so that they remember. But a lot of times you've already had that pre-conference and that student is ready. And then we want to also get the other student's voice into the conversation by asking them questions as well. So we want them to share what the incident, how the incident affected them or impacted them. What was the hardest thing for them? And what do you think needs to happen to make things right? Because that student knows how they want to make it right, but we don't know if that's going to make it right for the rest of the class. And they may need to have some conversation about, this is what we can make, and come to an agreement together.
And I think this example really illustrates why like relationships are so important. The amount of vulnerability and safety that has to be in place for a student to sit there in a circle with 30 of his peers and say, I messed up and I'm sorry that I lost it completely and threw the desk and screamed at you or punched Jimmy or killed the goldfish, right? Like, if I don't believe my teacher, the adult in the classroom, is going to keep this safe and keep things in order so people, because it's just like, we don't think in those moments that everybody's great and everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's okay, Zach, everything, like reality, most times that does happen, right? But we're not going into that unless we know we have relationships. We've done circles in our classrooms. The first time you do a circle should not be a solution circle in your classroom. This has got to be something that everyone sits down, they know what's coming. This is safe. We understand it, all of those things, right? And that's all founded on relationships with each other in the classroom, all the kids and with the teacher, to be able to come to this authentically and share and air out, I really screwed up. Like come on, y'all as adults, how often do we do that? Right? I mean, so this is one of the most powerful strategies, you guys, that can happen, helping people build that community whole. And so you can do these. This is part of the reintegration. This is definitely part of that. But let's say we've done the restorative discipline. Let's say the kid's been out of class. They've done the mediation. Let's say they just had to go home for the day or something like that, and the kid's coming back to class. We got to think about that whole heart of restorative practices. How do we make the community whole again? And that's reintegrating. That's coming back into our community ready, right? Feeling okay, not going in, because I think we think, which is kind of funny, because I think we sometimes assume students think, oh yeah, that teacher doesn't hold a grudge. Like as the teacher, I'm like, oh, Donna knows I don't hold a grudge. No, Donna thinks you're holding a grudge. Donna thinks you hate her. Right? And so that's what they're coming into class the next day. Right? My son was suspended for a day, and he's like, everybody thinks I'm a bad kid. My teachers aren't going to like me. Everyone's going to think I'm a bad kid. I'm like, no, that's not what teachers do, dude. Like, but it didn't matter, right? That's it. So how do we do this? Right? One of the things we can do is we can prepare the class. So if there's a massive blowout, right? A big deal, big fight in the classroom. I don't know. The kid lost it, dysregulated, throw a chair. We do a room clear. How do we prepare the class for that solution circle if Donna's willing to come back and own the behavior and talk to everybody about it? I might have to do a pre-circle with just the class guys, because again, equal energy for the harmed and the harmer. So in this case, the classroom was harmed. Am I giving them a chance to have their voice heard and talk to me as the trusted adult about how things are going and how they feel? Right? So I might have to do a circle it up and prepare the class like, hey guys, like Donna's going to be coming back. Like, I know that was scary yesterday. What do we need? What do you need? Right? And I'm not shaming Donna. I'm just matter-of-factly using affective statements, right? Like, yes, I was scared. That was scary. It's okay. Right? We love Donna, but that was a tough situation. So let's talk about it, right? I'm going to meet privately with that student first, right? Here's the thing is, if I can have a time, so, David takes a kid out of school and it's my class, right? And what I would encourage is I want to have an opportunity to talk to the kiddo before they come to my class, or at least have time to talk to David about it. So maybe they've talked about it, right? I want to talk to the dean. I want that opportunity to meet privately with the student using some of that affective language. Could even use that one-to-one structure, right? Maybe they need some idea, they need to catch up. So I'm trying to get them back into the education, and they might need some review of classroom expectations. So part of coming in from this is something bigger, right? This is maybe coming back from a suspension or something kind of bigger. How do I get them back in the classroom where like they're not scared? Everybody's looking at them. Everybody hates me. Everybody thinks I'm a jerk. All these things, right? So I'm starting that repair with the relationship I have, and I'm setting this kiddo up for success, right? I want to be truthful with that kiddo. If it's Donna coming back in the classroom, hey, Donna, this could be hard. That was really scary. And I'm telling you, I talked to the class, right? And they were scared. And so might be some of that. You might have to deal with some of that. And so let's just acknowledge that. I definitely want you in the class. The students want you in class. You're part of our community, right? I got to articulate that. I got to be explicit about this, not assuming Donna understands this. I need to, as the adult, I need to be explicit and let them know. And then maybe provide them some strategies. Hey, you know people are going to ask what happened, right? You left the classroom. It's been 2 days. You're just getting there. So they're going to ask what's going on. They probably already have on social media, but probably the dean did a really good job and told you to stay off your social media, you know, why this is going on and gave you some strategies. But I'm just letting you know we're coming back to class and something could happen. So let me give you. So I'm just trying to help make sure that this kiddo feels like they're welcome back in my classroom, that I don't like the behaviors, but I like the kid, right? And so I know Johnny can be hard, y'all. I know that, but I tell you, you do these things and it pays dividends.
And also be mindful of like when you have that student come back into the school, right? On Monday, I was in a meeting and this student was coming back out from a suspension reentry meeting. Well, guess what? There's all the students walking by as they have the student and his family sitting outside the office. Guess what? That little boy went and hid behind a tree because he was so embarrassed. So they could have easily changed that scenario for that child, for that family, for themselves by either starting the meeting before students started arriving, after they arrived, or having them be able to walk in and have a place to sit where they weren't in the pathway of everyone, right? We go into the meeting and the student's completely already overwhelmed because he's thinking, like Zach says, all these people hate me, these kids are gonna be mad at me. Had that gone differently, then he may have felt less attacked and more whole and really had the opportunity to be reintegrated in. So be mindful of your environment too when you're doing these things.
Well, that is 5 minutes. We're going to do questions. We have 5 minutes left, but I want to make sure that we do this. Donna, did you already put this in the chat?
Not yet. Let me grab it.
Okay, so it's going to go in the chat, y'all, just to do a feedback survey. We have 5 minutes left, so if you please would do that, and then we'll just take some questions for this remaining time, and then you have our contact information. So please do that survey, and then
I'm getting it in now. Just a second, guys.
okay. Yeah, what questions you guys have? I know it's hard on an hour and a half webinar to like give you everything. Like as I'm saying things, I'm like, oh, I forgot to say this and this and this and this. You know, this takes time, it takes practice. This is not a like, oh, I'm just gonna do this right away and do it perfect. It absolutely I can't even tell you how many times I messed this up. But I'll tell you what, when I grounded myself back into that, being in that with box, using that fair process, right? And using language that didn't trigger a student's survival brain, that affective language, it just made a huge difference, right? When I went into it with the right mindset of almost like I'm just curious, man. Like, want to hear. I mean, I see the video, but what happened, right? It just is a different feel of how things go. And you usually uncover some things. And sometimes it's exactly what it was. But I'm able to get someone taking some responsibility and taking some accountability and doing the work to make things right. And you know, that's just good for kids to have that. It's good for all of us to be able to right the wrongs that we created instead of someone else trying to right the wrong. It doesn't work when someone else is righting the wrong that you made. Right? We all know that as adults. That's the toolbox. None of us like things done to us. Kids don't like things done to them either. And as young people, a lot of things are done to them. They don't have a lot of voice, right? This is an opportunity for us to share some power, give kiddos voice, and hold them accountable.